Go.
Well, hello and welcome back to the weekly online video blog. And today I'm in Gifford Police Station. I've not been arrested or anything like that, so I'm here to interview Superintendent Shearer, who is the police officer in charge of policing here in East Renfrewshire. I'm delighted that so many of you got in touch with your questions for Superintendent Shearer. So we'll go through those questions, and I hope you find this video blog really very fascinating. If you get any questions, do get in touch with either myself or with the local police officers. Superintendent Shearer, a lot of people have sent in these questions about policing in East Renfrewshire. I just wanted to go through them in turn. The first one is that people have got in touch from Neilston about antisocial behaviour, particularly at times when the pubs are closing, noise and disruptive behaviour in the main street in Neilston. What is it local police are doing about that?
Well, as you'll be aware, Friday, Saturday nights are the traditional and classic times when we have reports of violence, antisocial behaviour, and not just in Neilston but in other areas. And we do centre an awful lot of our resources now on dealing with these issues. We've had some very specific dedicated action plans to go and deal with some of the pubs in Neilston and also in Barrhead and other areas of East Renfrewshire. What's really important to me is that we've done an awful lot of work in this area and we've been very successful, but it's very obvious if you have constituents that are raising concerns that there might well be still some issues there. It's really important to me that these people get in touch. I have a mechanism by which I direct my resources, and I can only do it if I know what's happening. So if whomsoever it is that has been in contact with you could contact me through the local police number, which is 0141 532 5700, then I'll be happy to listen to our concerns and direct resources into that area.
Great, thank you. That was Marie from Neilston that asked that question, so hopefully Marie finds that interesting. Margaret from Barrhead's got in touch on a related issue, which is what are the police doing generally to tackle antisocial behaviour by the minority of young people who cause trouble running about the streets and being generally disruptive?
Yeah, absolutely, and there's an interesting perception around young people. Some people wrongly perceive that all young people are involved in antisocial behaviour, and they're not. There is, however, a small minority of young people who are behaving in a way which is unacceptable. We are aware of that. We're doing everything we possibly can. One, to engage with those young people to try to educate them, but also to enforce the legislation which is available to us. Again, it's probably interesting for people to understand how I go about my business. I have a set number of officers within East Renfrewshire, and I direct those resources to the problems and the issues that I'm aware of. And again, if I know that a specific area is having an issue, I'll direct my resources into it. And I've done that recently with specific action plans into areas. We have done some specific work in Dunfermline, we've done some specific work in Stamperland, and certainly in the main street in Barrhead, where we've done some specific work around about the drug dealing which was apparent there. So yeah, absolutely, I feel we're doing an awful lot to combat these issues. But again, as I said earlier, in response to Marie's question, if there are specific areas that I don't know about, I'd love to hear about them and do something about it. One of the things I would change about policing is that when you go to Tullyallen, unfortunately, they don't give you a crystal ball, so I can't see it all, and I need people like yourself and people like your constituents to come to me, let me know where the issues are, and I'll put policing resources in to deal with it.
Great. John from here in Gifford's got in touch to say he's a wee bit confused about the difference between a police officer and a community police officer. Are there different powers? Do they have different responsibilities? How do you get in touch with the community police or the community police officer?
They are no different. They are exactly the same in terms of their training, in terms of their policing powers. The only difference is that I direct them to do slightly different jobs. And the reason for that is it's very obvious when we speak to the community, to people out there, that they have specific concerns about things like antisocial behaviour, and it's important I have a team of officers that I can direct in to deal with those issues. But there remains the safety issues, the emergency response issues that we have to have police officers ready to go and respond to serious road accidents, to robberies, to issues of people with firearms and the more high-level criminality. And so I have two separate teams. I have a response policing team who deal with the, I suppose you would describe it as your 999 type calls, and I have community policing teams who respond to the more antisocial behaviour type issues, the more community concerns, domestic incidents, racial incidents, homophobic incidents, that kind of thing. It just allows me to have two separate teams who have the right equipment to do the right jobs. In terms of contacting community police officers, that's relatively easy. There are full details on the Strathclyde Police website, and there's also telephone numbers which people can contact their local community officers. There are teams that operate from Barhead, and the telephone number for that is 0141 532 6200, and the GiftNut number is the same number as I gave for Marie earlier, which is 0141 532 5700, and those calls will be directed to the specific community police officer for the ward that the person lives in.
That's good to hear, and hopefully John's reassured by that. Now, Irene from Clarkson's got in touch to ask whether all the talk of crime and all the news reporting of crime, what's the truth of crime levels in East Renfrewshire? Because she's asking, has crime really gone down in East Renfrewshire?
Yes, it has actually. And knowing Irene's question, I did a wee bit of work yesterday around about the crime figures. More than 5% is the number that overall crime and offences have gone down in East Renfrewshire. Now that's compared against the 5-year average, which is the way that in general statisticians do their business. That's an overall figure. When you start to break that down, and I know that a lot of your constituents are really interested in antisocial behaviour, vandalism specifically has reduced by more than 12% on the 5-year average, which is fantastic. And the other interesting figure that I noticed yesterday is that the consumption of alcohol, the people reported for those offences, has raised by more than 10%. Now, I'm not an analyst by profession, but there may well be a correlation between those two figures. If we are taking alcohol from people and charging them for those offences, and vandalism is going down, it looks as if we're getting it right, and we will continue to target those specific areas in the next year to come.
Good. Well, Jean from Newton Mearns has also emailed in a question, which is that she's from Newton Mearns, and in and around her area she's worried about young people, back to this theme again, connected to drink and vandalism.
Yes.
And she says, when I call the police, they say they'll send someone, but often it takes too long. And she says, what's the point of calling the police? Because by the time it happens, by the time the police officer arrives, quite often the folk causing the trouble have left because they're not from the area. How would you respond to that question?
Well, that would be unfortunate if that's been her experience, and I would like to hope that that's not a general experience. I would suspect that what has perhaps happened is that Jean has been phoning at optimal times where we require to prioritise calls. Now we take it back to the discussion we had about community policing teams and response officers. Depending upon the officers available at that time, if there's a serious road accident or someone's life's in danger at a fire, we will automatically, and I think the public would expect, that we would send our officers to deal with those incidents. That doesn't, however, mean that Jean is not experiencing antisocial behaviour around about her home address, and I think what's really important is that we get that information from her. She has phoned the police, and that's the right thing to do. I think perhaps now, if she is having a recurring issue, what we have to do is get in touch with our local community policing team who are dedicated to that type of work. And if she could call the number that I gave earlier, specifically for GiftNut, which covers the Newton Mearns area, 0141 532 5700, and asks for the community policing team for Newton Mearns, we will make sure that someone comes to see her, finds out when the issues are, and we will direct our community policing resources into when she has the issue.
Still in Newton Mearns, Bob from Newton Mearns has got in touch as well, who says, I'm a wee bit confused. You've got community police officers, you've got other police officers, but you've also got community wardens employed by the council.
Yes.
Do you have anything to do with the council's community wardens? Is there any connection between policing and community wardens?
I don't direct the community wardens. That's a function which is taken on by the council and by their community safety team. But I most certainly have the opportunity to influence and negotiate with the managers there. We have a meeting every fortnight which is called a multi-agency tasking meeting, and that's similar to the work that I do in terms of my resources. We all get together ourselves, the fire service and the community safety people from the council, and we look at where the issues are within the East Renfrewshire area, and we direct all of those resources together, working in partnership to deal with the issues. So yes, I most certainly have to do with them. I don't specifically, I'm not their line manager, I don't direct them, but I work very closely with the managers within the council in order to make sure that we actually work together and deal with the issues. And the work that we did in Dunterley is a classic example of that. The residents of Dunterley raised issues to the council through the community safety group. We sat down with them and discussed the issues along with housing, and we've done some really quite impactful pieces of work in Dunterley, and I think we have genuinely made quite a lot of difference to a lot of people's lives in that area.